then eventually we move on to go to actually SummerSlam 2007 proper. And in doing so, what were your thoughts, and what were your, I guess, as we're going into the show now, and before we even get in, if you remember, what were some of the things you were thinking about?
Not much that I can remember, to be perfectly honest.
So I remember three big things. Number one, I was amped beyond belief at this point, because you got to remember, I've now had 2 signings. I've had a Ring of Honor show the night before, and I'm now going into this SummerSlam show. And for me, I'm like, this is the granddaddy. This is the main event. This is what all this has been building to. And I realized probably from this show that doing that sometimes can really lead to unrealistic hype that isn't going to be reached.
Yeah, and I will say, actually, thinking about it now, the one thing that I do remember about it was this being one of the very few times where I was actually rooting for Triple H to win.
Right.
Like hardcore, actually actively rooting for him to win.
Yeah, it was. I remember the crowd, too, was ungodly amped for Randy Orton. Like, Orton was at his height, probably his top of people being into his character. The Legend Killer thing had kind of resurfaced because he just put Shawn Michaels on the shelf.
Yeah.
He was reinventing himself quite a bit. From a personal standpoint, I had not really started wearing jeans or caring about the way I looked at all at this stage for whatever reason in my life. I don't know why. I'd always wear swishy pants and a wrestling t-shirt pretty much every single day. But seeing Orton come out in Affliction, seeing Orton come out in jeans, to me, I was like, that guy looks pretty cool. Why can't I do the exact same thing? And that is one of the things that really, in my opinion, reinvented myself to like, screw it, I'm just going to wear jeans. The Affliction looks cool, and I'm representing a fighter here. I'm going to wear this. And that is really, I'd say, probably 2000. It didn't happen really till 2008 or 9, but that's when I really started to reinvent myself and change a lot of who I was as a person as well. Rather than just this fun-loving wrestling guy who would just go to all these wrestling shows. At some point, I came to a point where I was like, I'd actually like, to do other things, have a bit of a social life and go do these other things. And I actually do attribute a lot of that to Randy Orton showing up on Raw and looking pretty darn cool.
I mean, I would also attribute that to that's kind of what happens in college, just across the board, like, especially even though you were kind of towards the tail end of it. But,
It's very true. I think also, you and Toby being around and wanting to go to the gym, and then me being like, hey, if I wanted to still hang out with my friends, I got to go to the gym. So I may as well just go. So then it became like, wanting to lose weight, all these different things. And eventually I decided I'm going to dress as Jeff Hardy for Halloween. And I was not going to be a fat Jeff Hardy. That just was my thing. And I did everything I could to lose a shit ton of weight. And that's really kind of how I kind of went from there.
It would be mean to say that you could have definitely gone as Matt instead.
I should have just gone as Matt. Could have just put a little Matt Hardy shirt on. I got a little wig tied up the back of my hair.
Do the pencil mustache, the pencil neck beard type.
Yeah, maybe shave the sides of my hair there, and could have just been Matt Hardy and not had to go through so much suffering for no damn reason whatsoever. But yeah, so in any event, so people were really into Randy Orton. People were over John Cena at this point. They were ready for a title change. And I also remember going into the show, there was we had some interesting company with us at the time. I loved my buddy Matt at the time, but he was rooting for every heel all the time. I think part of his was like, he was doing the trolling thing before trolling was a thing.
I think trolling was a thing, but like it was just starting to be a thing.
Right. So let me go and cheer for every heel. No matter what. I remember we went to a show with a bunch of the people I supported, individuals with autism, and Tatanka came out, and Binder was booing Tatanka out of the building, despite the guy being a babyface, and everyone getting really upset at him, and him just taking it all in as this was the greatest. And so that's going into SummerSlam 2. And I also remember the other person we had company with not really being a fan, and so she, by her just being there, kind of put a downer on a lot of the hype and excitement for all of us. I hate to say that just in case she's watching, I'll feel so bad. But that was the truth. So, what can I say? Steve Laughs already fell off camera. I was hoping he was okay. But yeah. So that was the truth. You have to go to a show with people who share your mindset to a certain extent, at least your excitement level, or it'll bring down your own excitement level.
So what I would say about that is that, when we went to NXT a couple of years ago, weird to think that it was a couple of years ago at this point. But when we went to NXT, I had absolutely no idea who any of those wrestlers were. But I still went in with excited to go and watch this wrestling show. I was excited to participate. I was excited to go and, kind of reinvigorate my interest for it.
Yeah.
If you go to a wrestling show and you are not interested in any of the wrestlers and you don't really care about anything that happens and you're not going to participate as a crowd member, you have to participate as an audience member. I feel when you go to a wrestling show, it's the same thing with going to a concert. When you go to a band concert, you want to be standing up and singing along, or you want to be you want to feel like you're part of this crowd. That's why you go to a show instead of not sitting at home and watching it on TV.
Right.
100%. It's an experience, and you want to fully participate in that experience. If you don't, what is the point of going?
Yeah, if this is you're doing this instead of going to a coffee shop or a restaurant, it's not going to be the same thing. No one wants to sit there and have a big catch-up conversation in the middle of a wrestling show. They want to suspend their disbelief, forget about the crap in their life for a bit, and become fully invested in the show. That's what I loved. And that's what I loved about Matt and his girlfriend at the time was, normally we'd go to the shows, they'd have big signs with them because they were just ready to be a fan. Unfortunately, because we got tickets right when they went on sale and went for the cheapest seats, our seats were absolutely horrendous for this show.
Horrible.
It was the worst seats I had ever been to until WrestleMania 35, where we were lower level, but right behind the stage, so you couldn't see the stage at all. This, we were so high up. We were in the nosebleeds, way behind the Titantron.
Yeah.
And it took us out of the excitement of being there. It was it would have been better just to watch it at home if we were going to.
Yeah, it definitely did. And had we known that was going to be the experience, maybe we would have thought twice about it. But I think we were just so excited to go to this show.
Right.
And for it to be SummerSlam, going to SummerSlam, it's the second, maybe second or third to WrestleMania or Royal Rumble. So,
and it's just the idea of it's the cap of the summer. It's right there. The summer's feeling great. Clearly, we've been building this up all month, and we get there, and then our seats are awful, and it's how do we even get into this here where things are? And this show, because of how terrible our seats were, I actually thought this SummerSlam was the worst of all time because of how bad that experience was being in such a crappy event, to the point that myself, Matt, and his girlfriend were planning to take the day off the next day and go to Raw, which was in Boston. We did not, and you definitely were having none of that plan. I remember that specifically.
Yeah, no.
Why would we bother? Enough. At that point, we were I'm not sure. We need a little break from WWE. That was just awful. But upon rewatch, which we both watched this week, I actually think this is a pretty good show.
I think it's definitely a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Both what little I remembered about it and also what I remembered just about the product at the time.
Right. Yeah. No. I also agree. And it was one of these things where every match that came out, I was this is gonna be rough. And then the matches happened, and they were all pretty okay. They were kept short, which I think really helped a lot. No match was more than 10 minutes except for the main event, and that really went maybe Hunter's match, but that really went a long way.
Yeah, and I think and it was I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with most of this. There were a couple of still bumps in the road.
Yeah, I can't come out here and say upon looking back, Great Khali had a lot of athleticism. Because he didn't. He had none. But he looked really impressive. So I guess let's get into the actual show. One of the things that jumps out at me, first of all, I guess there was two things. One is the opening video package to the show, where they started off, you get kind of the breakdown of some of the bigger matches, and they go, end now, and then the entire screen goes back, and they start to show you the rebuilding of Triple H.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was really cool, actually. I thought this was great.
And I remember that I remember when it happened, and the clip of all of the officials and everybody helping him back out of the ring up the ramp.
Yeah.
That moment to me is just like one of like the top moments that's kind of like burned into my memory. And
Right.
I think maybe it's because they played it so many times in all of his different packages. And I remember leading up to this, there was the story of him going through rehab. There were a couple of other videos that they had played along the way of him going and doing surgery and the rehab and all of this stuff.
Yeah, no, and it was like, we will rebuild him.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like overseeing, and it kind of intertwined with King Booker. Booker T had reinvented himself as King Booker at this time, and his big deal was he was unhappy that Triple H was going by King of Kings because he felt he was the rightful King of Kings.
Right.
And upon looking at this, I was remembering how funny Booker T was in his King Booker character, and I don't think I remembered how much I thoroughly enjoyed it until some of these video packages and some of his vignettes that you'd see throughout the night. I thought he actually did play this role really well.
I think it was one of those things for me where, because Matt was like so hardcore rooting for him,
mm-hmm.
He was such a huge fan, they kind of took it away. It took something away from it for me.
Right. Because if Matt was booking the show, he would have booked Triple H for his big return to show up and lose.
Yeah.
Clean to King Booker. And it just was not what was going to happen. And the second thing, before we even get into the matches, the entrance here is incredible. It looks like they've created a beach entrance in the thing there with the tiki torches and the hammocks and everything. They created a real SummerSlam appeal here.
It reminded me a lot of Bash at the Beach, the old WCW.
Yes, except that was actually, I think, on a beach, right?
Yeah. I think it may have been once or twice, but either way, that was a lot of the set design going around it was very beachy and stuff. So yeah, there was like a boardwalk as the ramp and like that kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. So our first match here, and I groaned when I sat down to watch this, and I had the wonder of the world is come. I was like, oh no, not Kane to start off. I mean, that I groaned like most people do every time the guy tweets these days. It was like, I mean, not excited to see Kane at all start off the show, because typically now the best match of the night is typically the match that opens the show.
Right.
So I thought, how do you start the show with Kane? And I almost felt like I was reverting back to my 2007 self, because post Kane unmasking, I'm very much like not into Kane. We literally for years would chant "Please retire" at the guy. We just were not into his character at all. So he comes out here. What were your thoughts going into this?
I mean, my thoughts, unfortunately, are very similar, where I love that is still one of my favorite entrance songs. Like one of my favorite theme songs.
Yeah.
I still listen to it like when I'm at the gym.
That's Finger 11, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great song.
But I would agree, like post unmasking him, like there was just he used to be one of my favorite wrestlers, and now it's sadder nowadays, seeing how everything he's whatever he's become. But that's besides the point. It definitely felt like how far he fell. To go from being a world champion to being a world contender and all of those things, and like top to top, to opening the match against Finlay.
Right. Now Finlay's another guy who not due to anything he's ever done, but I do remember like we always used to do the theme song for Finlay. His name's Finlay, and I love to fight. And we talk about him a good amount of the time, and I'd always add in my own, my name's Finlay, and I love to fight, which was not his theme song, and he did not have a hearty belly laugh in there. But because of that, I feel like I enjoyed Finlay a lot more. So Finley came out. I was like, all right, this should be at least decent. And actually, I like this match a lot.
It was, again, like, I did not have any sort of expectations for it at all. Yeah. So the fact that I did not immediately fall asleep or fast forward through it was good enough for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I remember watching it and being like, oh, I know Steve watched this show. He probably didn't last very long because this match is tough. But it was pretty good. Like, it was not bad. And this is still early on with Hornswoggle. Because they eventually do revamp the Vince McMahon angle and pretty much redo it a few weeks later. And instead of it being who killed Vince McMahon, it's who's Vince McMahon's bastard son. So Hornswoggle, in my opinion, once he becomes Vince McMahon's bastard son, he becomes like overexposed and just enough. But at this stage where he's still kind of Finley's little bastard, where Finley literally picks him up from under the ring like he's a table and throws him as a weapon, I think he's pretty funny. And I thought this was really good, and Kane got a win, which I was surprised about because I thought Finley had him when he hit him with the shillelagh outside of the ring. But I liked the match a lot, and I thought he got the show off to a good start.
I would say that it got it off to a good start. Yeah.
Do you have the card in front of you? I want to make sure. I'm going to go off my memory here. I don't know if you can pull it up.
Yeah, I do have it.
All right. So next up, I think, is the triple threat match between Kennedy, Carlito, and Umaga. And this was changed. It was initially supposed to be a rematch from Great American Bash between Umaga and Jeff Hardy. Unfortunately, Hardy was suspended for undisclosed reasons before the show had began, which would be a sign of things to come, which we'll get into. But
15 years later, still a thing, you know.
What's that?
15 years later, still a thing.
Yeah, still a thing. And Jeff would eventually become the world champion for WWE. But I think it was supposed to happen way earlier than it did. But he had been suspended in 2007 and 2008, and was one strike away from being completely fired from WWE. Yeah. So, just a sea of just unfortunate circumstances with Jeff. I think if he had not had these issues, I think he would have been, in the same sentences as the greatest of all time.
Yeah, definitely. He would be up there with like Orton and Cena.
Right. Yeah. And so instead you get these three heels, Carlito, Caribbean Cool, Mr. Kennedy, and Umaga. Kennedy loved the entrance again, especially the whole drop of the microphone and all that. And I remember at the time when we were going to these Yankee games, Ian Kennedy was one of their relievers, and he'd come in to Kennedy's theme. Yeah. And that was like, and he's still in the league, which is crazy to think 15 years later. He's had like a solid career as like a reliever who has bounced around. But I thought this match again was actually pretty good, short and sweet. And I thought Umaga came across looking like he was one of the next big things for WWE after this match.
Yeah. It was one of those things where both Kennedy and Umaga, I feel like suffered from a lack of like their move set, like their signature moves weren't right. They weren't there. Like Kennedy's thing was like he had the guy, like it was like a roll over, drop weird thing,
and it like just didn't look like it would have hurt the guy as much as it hurt him.
It always looked like he was like 6 inches from breaking his own neck.
It was like, Ken, why didn't you just pick him up into your arms like this and go straight forward? Wouldn't that have done just the same amount of damage?
I feel like it was more. It was like also, if you remember, John Cena has the FU, Brock has the F5. Like it was trying. I feel like it was trying to piggyback on those. Like I'm gonna get the guy up on my shoulders and then do something.
Right.
CM Punk has the same thing where I forget what his move is.
Oh, the GTS, yeah.
Yeah, so again, up on his shoulders and then does something else. Where I feel like it was, if I want to be one of those guys, I'm going to get up on my shoulders and then do something.
Right. And I feel like the moves for me that I always like, the finishing moves are, moves that can happen out of nowhere. The RKO, the Stone Cold Stunner, the 619, Ray can just hit you in the knees. You pop in the ropes. He flips around and hits you. Yeah. That move is like, it's coming. He's got to pick you up on the shoulders. He's set up for it. And it's just, it's clunky. You're right. It's not a great move there.
Clunky is a great word for it.
Yeah. And it's a shame with Kennedy because Kennedy, I don't know if he had anything to do with the killing of Vince McMahon, but he was 100% going to be the son of Vince McMahon. And if you think about it, if he were to get that, he's set up for life. Like, he's still making appearances here today as one of the members of the McMahon family because they have no choice. Storyline wise, he's there. Hornswoggle, they got out of that by saying he was really Finley's son, then wrote them both off. But I feel like that would have been a huge thing for him, and it just did not happen.
Yeah, and with Umaga, it was like the Samoan Spike, like, horrible finisher. And the thing is, like, he had all these other moves that could have been his finisher instead.
Right.
Like the Samoan drop, like a bunch of other things that he did that looked really cool. And then you got the Samoan Spike, which, come on.
Well, he does. So there's one move where it reminded me a lot of Roman. I don't know I know you haven't watched too much Roman Reigns, but he's obviously Roman's cousin. Yeah. And Roman has the guy get up, and as the guy's getting up, Roman he goes onto the corner, and he does the big right, or something like that. And Umaga was doing something where the guy was getting up, and he went in the other corner, and he let out a big, like, Fa Samoa. Yeah. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, it reminded me a lot of Roman. It's a shame Umaga, unfortunately, is gone within just a couple of years. He's passed away.
Yeah.
So that one is definitely tough. After this, probably one of my favorite highlights of the show, it is a backstage vignette where they are talking about, now Vince McMahon is over the top, and he's doing way too much of Shock TV Vince McMahon nonsense. But the vignette, I could imagine us sitting in our seats and losing our minds over everything in this vignette because it has so much of what we enjoy. You have all these guys back there. You've got Armando Estrada. You have Coach. You have William Regal, Vince McMahon, and then Crime Time show up. And for whatever reason, start talking about the money. Yeah. And they all start doing the dance in a circle. And William Regal eventually joins in and just starts losing his mind, busting a move, going crazy, until eventually everybody leaves, leaving William Regal there to bump into Ron Simmons, who was another one of our group's absolute favorite people and who lets out a picture-perfect damn.
Yep. And still to this day, it's one of my favorite.
Especially
Ron
because,
Simmons is one of my favorite backstage segments.
Yeah. Especially because, like, as it progressed, he would be like, you'd get there and both, like, Ron and the person would start looking at each other like, I know. Go ahead, hit me with it. And then Rob would hit him with, damn. It was just great. And clearly that's just, I think that's because Crime Time was on the rise and they wanted to have a reason to shoehorn them into the show, and they were not on the show other than that. So really, really thought that was there. I didn't even check. Was there a on the thing? Does it show any sort of dark match that was on there?
There was actually.
Oh, there you go. Who was the dark match?
It was the World Tag Team Champions Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch. Defeating Paul London and Brian Kendrick, the aforementioned.
Very cool. That's a solid match. Probably that's as good as anything on the show itself. Is the next match, if I'm not mistaken, is it Rey Mysterio and Chavo Guerrero Jr.?
Yep.
So this was another thing. Not only was Triple H returning from injury, but Rey Mysterio Jr. was also returning from injury. And in one of the big things that he comes out, he's dressed as the Silver Surfer. What did you think of this costume?
I love Rey Mysterio. Like, I love all of his costumes. Like, I love all of the theme costumes. Like.
And I think this one is because The Rise of the Silver Surfer is coming out at the time.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I never saw that movie, but I thought this was a cool and unique look. Rey, again, is returning from a major injury. He's been out actually longer than Triple H. He's been out for 10 months. Chavo put him out. I'll be honest, I love Eddie Guerrero, love Rey Mysterio, love the SmackDown 6, that whole era. I've never been a Chavo Guerrero guy.
I don't know if it was his gimmicks, if it was something like he just kind of didn't do it for me. But Rey Mysterio, Eddie, all of the Lucha guys, great. But Chavo, I don't know, there was just something. This match was really good.
Yeah, it was. I think it's also his music hit, and I can almost see picturing us in 2007 running to the merch stand, and in 2022 running to the restroom or running to go play with my daughter or something while Chavo was coming out, because the music, it just feels like such a downgraded type thing.
If it had not been Rey Mysterio's return, you'd probably be right.
Right. But Rey did feel like a huge deal. You're right with Rey.
So I
we definitely
I feel like we would have stayed put during this one.
We definitely did. You're right. That's a very good point. And they built it up. He got so much pyro.
Yeah.
He got such a big thing. And when he gets to the ring, the crowd's just like so amped for him. And it felt like, I mean, they are trying to pull out all the stops on this show here. Not only are they giving you Triple H, but you're getting Rey's return too. And Rey obviously gets the win here, which he should have on his big return match.
Yeah. And the only thing that would have made it better is if he would have been able to come up with his like coming out of the stage entrance.
Yes, he didn't do that. I wonder if that's
probably because of the stage. Like.
Oh, right. Good call. Yeah. You're right. He doesn't do that. He runs out. That's a good point. I wonder if that's the first time he didn't pop up like that.
I don't know when he started to do that. That's the thing. Did he start to do that like before?
Yeah, he started to pop up when he came to WWE.
Oh, okay.
That was like his big. Who's that jumping out? This guy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because this was also when he comes out to POD instead.
I wonder if that's one of the. No, it wasn't his first time because he did it when he won the title in 2006. POD was there live to perform.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool to see him back and really, really good stuff. Next up, I want to say is the Divas Battle Royal.
Sure is.
There you go. What was your first thought when this one pulled up?
That I could go to the bathroom and not miss anything.
And it's so sad because like that was 100%. I think the reason why the Divas matches were in WWE TV back in the day was to position them where you just had Rey and Chavo, big emotional excitement for Rey's return. Run the Divas out there so people have a chance to collect themselves, go use the restroom, get their merch. I went and got that SummerSlam 2007 shirt that I sold like the cheap son of a gun I am many years later, and regret it to this day. But you know that is why they're there. They're there to break up the show and get people so that they can get ready for whatever's coming afterwards.
Right. Well, and the fact that this is back to back with another non-wrestling in-ring segment.
Yes.
That's exactly what this is for. But I will say it was not as bad as I remember the women's wrestling division being.
100%.
I think that's because we actually paid attention this time.
Right.
I don't know.
This watching it on this rewatch is probably the first time we've seen this.
Yeah, that's very positive. Yeah,
that we were out the door and getting food and doing what we needed to do.
I will say also though, one of the things that I kind of had like a mini epiphany where one of the reasons why the women's divisions were so bad is like at least 75% attributed to Jerry the King Lawler's horrible commentary throughout this.
Oh yeah. And he's still doing that in these matches too, which is like, it's way past him doing this in the Attitude Era and being annoying.
It was annoying then. It was just, it felt uncomfortable then. And even now, 15 years later, it feels exponentially worse.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like it could never happen in 2022.
But also, like, I feel like I think maybe it's also because it's a little bit more shifted with the fact that women's wrestling is taken more seriously now. Maybe that kind of commentary isn't as much. Because I remember even, on like SmackDown, Taz kind of trying to fill in that role a little bit as well.
Yeah, talking about tomatoes. How it is or
whatever it was. But especially considering this is also when you have people like Victoria and Beth Phoenix in this match, solid wrestlers.
Yeah, there was some good folks there. Michelle McCool was a part of this match and really kind of took over and looked pretty badass. I'm assuming at this point she's now probably Miss Undertaker in 2007 or on her way to becoming it because she looked great in the match. I thought she was looked like a real dominant force.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, rewatching it, there's a lot more. I feel like I appreciate that match more now than I did 15 years ago.
If you had told me, my life depended on naming the person that they'd be challenging for the women's title, I could have went through 50 names before I finally got Candice Michelle. I did not remember her too much at all, and the idea that she was the champion that they were chasing was definitely interesting.
I'm pretty sure I only remember her because she was one of the ones that was in Playboy. She was,
and she was also she had a thing on the Super Bowl every year before she went to WWE. That's how she became sort of popular. I don't remember, but The next up, though, on the show is the Matt Hardy and MVP segment. They had set this up earlier in the day when Vince McMahon was talking with MVP, and MVP was saying that he'd actually be honored to be Vince's son. Really, what had occurred was MVP, due to the wellness policy, they had actually noticed that he had a heart condition where he had a rapid heartbeat. So they took him out of the ring for a while to get that situated. Which is why instead of doing matches, him and Matt Hardy were doing all these things to try to one-up one another, and really had such a fun rivalry between the two of them. One of my favorite rivalries between the two of Matt Hardy's career. As I've said, Matt Hardy's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and I think the two of them really could have done great. I really enjoyed everything they did.
Yeah, except for I feel like this segment went on a little bit too long. Like the lead up to it was just a little bit too long.
It's one of these things where I did not expect that that's where it was going. I guess I just didn't think that like Austin was a thing. And I mean the big thing here, eventually MVP challenges Matt Hardy to a beer drinking contest. Doing the research now and realizing that Austin was in town to do something for this show makes it a lot more sense that like, oh, okay, Austin would show up. But at the time, like, rewatching this, I'm like, where is this going? Like, I don't remember. I don't think Austin's a part of this show. But he was, and he shows up, and it was, his part was, probably the shortest, sweetest part of the whole thing. He just comes in there, gives him they do the beer cheers, and he knocks out. MVP hits him with the stunner, and away we go. I was almost getting ready and excited to hear some of Austin's promo. We never got that here.
No, and that's like, I feel like the MVP comes out. He talks for what feels like forever.
Forever, yeah.
And then Hardy comes out. And then like he teases it a little bit too far where the crowd starts to get the idea, and then he draws it out even more. Right. And it's like, dude, like the second that you said I'm naming a replacement, Austin's music should have hit. That's it. It feels like the next. It's like it probably wasn't that long, but it felt like it dragged it out so much longer than it needed to be.
100. Yeah, I mean, it really was one of these deals where I think Matt should have just came out and said, "Unfortunately, I have acid indigestion and can't compete, but I have a suitable replacement." And then Austin's music hits, or they have the little challenge and he loses, and then brings in Austin to face MVP after, or something like that.
Right. Or what would have been even better was if MVP brings like a replacement, but like not a great replacement, and then Matt says, "Well, funny enough, I have my own replacement," and then.
Right. I mean, like, so Sandman's on the roster at the time.
Yeah, there you go.
That could have been.
I actually, that would have been so much better if it was a Sandman versus Stone Cold legitimate drinking contest. Not what they had. If like that. A
dream match in any city for sure.
Yeah, would have been perfect.
But yeah, so I thought that was cool. The idea of Austin showing up really got me. I was surprised there. From there, I believe we go into is it Batista and Great Khali, or is it Triple H?
There's one more before that.
Triple H and Booker T. Oh, CM Punk.
Oh, there's two more before that, I guess then.
CM Punk and John Morrison.
Yep.
And I wasn't feeling it. I didn't enjoy this match as much as I thought. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I remember they eventually have a match on ECW TV that I remember watching at your place. Yeah. And Punk won the title, and that was very good. But this one just felt like, I think John Morrison still wasn't fully comfortable. I mean, being the guy to replace Chris Benoit, can you really blame him? Yeah. But it was, I think they were still finding their footing. And, I think that their rivalry being tied to Benoit for so long, because this is now in the end of August 25th, and they are still going off of a rivalry that started back at Vengeance and June 24th. So probably just a little too long here in the tooth.
Also, something that I forgot to mention at the beginning was how confused I was that there were 3 different announcer tables.
Yes,
until I was like, oh, right, ECW was a thing with them.
The awful WWE ECW revival. Yeah. And I feel like at this point, I totally forgot that Punk was still in ECW for well after a year since his launch at this point.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised to still see him over there.
Yeah, but I was I think the worst part about this was that I feel like Morrison should have he should have won clean.
Yeah, because he did something. Yeah, especially because they're trying to establish his character as a big deal, and as a real champion here. So I agree, he should have gotten a couple of clean wins, and he does not do that.
Not for any other reason than he misses the rope the first couple of times he tries for it.
Yeah, I was surprised that Peacock still had that. You'd think they'd make that a little smoother. But I could imagine 2007, definitely Matt and myself were probably, you effed up, you effed up, you effed up the second it took place, which is a not nice independent wrestling chant that we got way too much excitement over doing it if anyone screwed up. I definitely know I did. I don't know about you, but I used to jump up to my feet and scream you effed up the second that got random ticket seller who has no experience after he messed up.
You would also do it in like normal everyday life.
So. Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, to this day, if we're driving around our area and there's a parking space that's never there, and if the very rare time there's a parking space in front of our house, we get a big holy shit. So still use wrestling chants to this day.
Yeah.
This
is awesome.
Oh yeah, exactly. This is awesome's a good one. Yeah, my personal favorite was when we'd go to the independent wrestling shows and they'd go on so long that the crowd would start chanting "We see daylight."
Yeah,
it's a great one.
Like that actually happened once.
Oh yeah, for sure, without question. Next up on the show here is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the return of Triple H to take on King Booker. And this is where Matt, I think, really, he did his best to derail Triple H's return because he was cheering for Booker so much and was so invested. I have no problem with it. At the end of the day, if you're cheering and you're really invested in your person, while I probably prefer the old traditional root for the babyface, boo the heels, if at the end of the day you're invested in the person, I think it's great. It's just like clearly Triple H was not going to come back here and lose to Booker T. So you were just setting yourself up for disappointment.
I also feel like there are some where it's like, you could root for guys that are like, I want to put this nicely, better wrestlers than Booker T.
Right.
To say that's my guy. Like.
Yeah. Well, and I think
that was his guy. Like that was his, like.
I think also it's like you couldn't turn around and say, oh man, they're really holding Booker back. He was given a world title as King Booker, so they weren't holding Booker back, and I think that they had screwed him in WrestleMania 19, but this was now several years later, and King Booker was one of the more featured acts in WWE. So Triple H gets the win. I will say, after the match, the standing ovation, the over-the-topness, even from the announcers, when the match itself was basically a squash, Triple H beat him pretty handily.
Yeah,
I thought that was a little over the top, and you could almost see the scowl in JR's face as he clearly is being told, "Guy, stand up, show him respect."
Yeah, put him over.
Yeah. So but I thought I thought it was cool to see that return. Another match I think that being there live, or we may have skipped, was, I don't think we skipped it, and the reason I don't think we skipped it was I know it was Great Khali against Batista.
Match of the night. 5 stars.
Well, I will say, I did not appreciate Batista as much as I should have when I was actually watching and while he was around. Later on in life, I did. So when I was at WrestleMania 35, I remember doing the whole and getting the whole thing down and everything and being like, this guy's awesome. 2007, I absolutely hated Batista. He was the guy I couldn't stand. Anytime from 2005 through his entire run, I couldn't stand him.
But I think that was also one of those, like, I hate him as a person off screen type of things where 100%. He had some personal stuff going on that we weren't fans of. So that had a part of it.
Right. The rumor was that while Batista's wife was dealing with cancer, he had cheated on her with Melina and was in a relationship with Melina while she was in a relationship with John Morrison. And I was just like, screw this guy. Like, screw him. And so I do remember Binder, Matt, whatever. You guys can look him up on Twitter. He doesn't need the plug. But it went through, and he was cheering loudly for Khali, and it was "Let's go Khali," and the guy behind us let out a big, "Oh God!" Now it's "Let's go Khali." God, there's always an asshole, and I'm still in that. There's always an asshole line forever since then. I'll never forget. There's always an asshole, and I think he was, I think that point he had gotten way too much with the stuff, and I think we at that point were like, enough, because people were getting pissed around us. And
I was getting pissed.
Yeah, it was like, enough of this. If we're not into Batista, fine, but you can't just sit there and "Let's go Khali" just to piss off the whole area around us.
Right.
Matt, rooting for the Great Khali aside, what were your thoughts here of the Great Khali, and I guess of this match with Batista?
So I knew going in that it was not going to be good.
Right.
I knew going in that Batista was going to have to try and carry this match somehow. But the thing is that because he is so stiff, and because he just doesn't do anything really. Like, I remember there's a moment where Khali has him on his knees basically, and he's got his hands on his shoulders, like he's supposed to be doing some amazing, horrible submission hold, and it's just like he's giving him a back massage.
Right.
Why is this and to their credit, I think this was the SmackDown match, right?
Yeah.
So the announcers on this were Cole and JBL.
JBL, yes, because JBL had moved over to commentary at this point.
Right. They're selling the heck out of this, trying to sell how big of a monster the Khali is, and how ruthless he is, and how dangerous he is, and all this. And there was something about where JBL was like, "I'm not going to mince words. He's awful. He's an ugly son of a gun," and goes off on this thing, and it's just yeah, we know.
Right.
He shouldn't be in this match. Or if anything, this could have been the opener match, or this could have been I get why it definitely it was kind of a roller coaster thing where Triple H, his return was huge. Yeah, that match was a squash, but that moment was big.
Right.
So they needed something to kind of be in between that and the main event.
Makes sense. That does make a lot of sense.
But this I feel like it sucked all of the energy out of everything, especially with the ending where Khali gets DQ'd.
Right. Yeah, and I remember that when Khali did get DQ'd, Matt was just to the moon because Batista didn't get the title back. But it's almost like at that point it isn't even fun. You don't want this guy as the champion, even if you're rooting for all the heels, because he's just killing the show. He's literally the world champion of the SmackDown brand at this time. And it feels like a similar situation where so Brock Lesnar's back in WWE now. He's fighting Roman Reigns this year at SummerSlam. And they're going back to that well because everybody has gotten injured. And it feels like back in 2007, and the difference being, of course, so basically they're going back to that well because they know Brock Lesnar at least is a household name. They'll sell pay-per-views. Back in 2007, it felt like if all else failed, they went back to the Great Khali simply because he was just this larger-than-life big person. But the problem is, he was just not good. And I feel like for me, that was something I did not watch SmackDown at that time. And I think it was because I'd watched the pay-per-views, I watched all the Raws, and I'd check in on SmackDown once in a while. But I know for me, it was how do you watch something where you have the Great Khali in there with Batista? I mean, just not good. And Khali main events an additional SummerSlam. Well, not main events, but he's in another SummerSlam as the world champion. They went with him for way too long into these situations.
I mean, any amount of time was too long. Once you realize, once you saw him once, and it's still Batista is a huge dude.
Yeah.
And he is he's tiny compared to Great Khali. Anybody aside from maybe the Big Show.
Right.
Or I'm blanking on the guy's name now that showed up in AEW. I don't remember what his name is either. Yeah. But he's also a big guy, but both of those at least they're capable wrestlers. I haven't seen too much of the AEW guy, but from what little I've seen, he's actually a decent wrestler.
Right.
Like, you know, all big guys are going to be a little bit slow. They're going to be a little bit clunky, but like Khali is just like he just stands there and he just like all he can do is stomp around.
Yeah. No, I mean it was just not good, and for me this definitely was the low light of the event. And I was ready to get to the main event, which was John Cena versus Randy Orton. And when you hear, I don't know about you, but when I hear John Cena versus Randy Orton, I immediately go, oh my God, John Cena versus Randy Orton, because they've fought at main evented some odd 20 pay-per-views. But at this stage, back in SummerSlam 2007, this was the very first one-on-one pay-per-view meeting between the two. They had a couple of pay-per-view matches prior, Backlash 2007, a fatal four-way, including Edge and Shawn Michaels, and then the fatal five-way at Vengeance, including Bobby Lashley, Mick Foley, and I guess it was King Booker. So now having a one-on-one match for the first time, this felt like a massive thing. Yeah,
but also at the same time, again, like rooting for Randy Orton here. Like Randy Orton is probably also like I wouldn't say necessarily top 5, but top 10 of my least favorite wrestlers, just because it's that outside thing where like he just looks like a dick. Mm-hmm. Like he looks like he does his character. And also there was the thing with like him and Foley and like being a mark. Like I'm always gonna side with Foley.
Yeah.
So him like, and going back and like reading Mick's book where he talks about that storyline.
Yeah.
How he wants Orton to get put Orton over and all that stuff, like it's great, but I'm still gonna side with Foley, ergo I'm gonna side against Orton.
Right.
And like Evolution was not my thing either, you know.
Yeah, they were basically running roughshod over everything for so long. So I completely agree. And obviously but at the same time, I think at this point we are so well past. Cena's had the title for a very long period of time, to the point that, you know, one of the things that I think was keeping us very invested as fans of WWE, I don't know if it had started just yet, but was going to start. If not, it would have started a little while later, was the Save Us.Y2J vignettes that were starting up. And Jericho made it very clear, you know, the whole point there was Jericho was supposed to be coming in to save the WWE and the WWE universe, the fans, of John Cena's long, lengthy title reign. And unfortunately, Cena got hurt and he lost the belt to Orton. So I feel like that kind of took a lot of steam out of Jericho's return. But that was something that I think everyone at this point was just ready to move on, and the crowd was ready for Orton to get the title. And apparently the story goes he was supposed to, and then they changed things to send the crowd home happy, quote unquote, and give Cena the title.
Sending me home happy would have been Orton getting the title. So
I don't know what they were thinking here. That was certainly the right call. All 4 champions on this show retained their titles. So I think that would have been certainly something to really to send everyone home like, hey, you've witnessed something great, a title change here. It was a really good match. I on rewatch, I thought it was way better than I remember it, because I remember the sting from it and the bad taste in my mouth from leaving the show after Cena is basically destroyed by Orton for about 90 minutes, almost the entire time of this match, and then hits. I think Orton hits the RKO, gets a 2 count. Cena pops up, hits the AA, and goodnight, the FU. We're going home and it's over.
Yeah.
And it's like out of nowhere, he just immediately just pops back up, hits his finisher, and that's it. And it was just wind out of the sails, and one of the most disappointing endings to a show, certainly at that time period. And it was growing very tired with John Cena always winning.
And see, when I rewatched this, I had a very different opinion of this match. My opinions of the wrestlers themselves aside, I was not super impressed with this one. It was a little bit too much like submissions and like jockeying and stuff, and like these guys are not submission
That's a good point.
wrestlers. Like, you know, if it's like I don't know, like Bret Hart match, like you expect Bret Hart to be a submission guy. You expect that. You expect certain guys to be like this was with John Cena bringing in the STFU as his like submission move was like when The Rock brought in the sharpshooter for his submission move.
Right.
Like
right.
it's like that's not your move. Like we get it. You're trying new things and like maybe it's like you want to add a submission because I think like both of them at some point were like in a submission only match and it was like a way to incorporate into their kind of wheelhouse. But
Right.
you're not that guy.
No, definitely not. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's interesting because I remember we left that bill and I think that was one of the times where I was like, wow, that's when we need a little break. You feel I definitely did. I felt wrestled out from all the hype. And then you get there and the show ends on such a sour note. I think that for me, I know like we had the plan, maybe if the show was good, we'd go to Boston the next day. We did not. And things did slow down a little, I think, as a fan.